Senator Bragg.
Thanks very much. Can I ask you some questions about the HAF?
Yes. Oh, good. You do that.
What sort of contact did Treasury have with the CBUS super fund before their public commitment of $500 million on 25 November 2022?
Thanks, Senator. I believe this was a subject of FOI, but I might ask Ms Crosswaite if she wants to answer this one.
Karen Crosswaite, First Assistant Secretary, Housing Division. Senator, I wasn't in the department at the time. However, I understand that CBUS participated in the Treasurer's Investor Roundtable, and that discussion was primarily focused around increasing the involvement of institutional investors in social and affordable housing. Following that meeting, I believe it was following that meeting, I might have to check with my colleague, the CBUS provided a submission to the public consultation that was underway on the HAF, and it's my understanding that that's the only involvement that housing-related functions of Treasury have had with CBUS.
Okay, and why was that the only confidential submission out of 50 or 60 submissions?
I might just have to check with my colleague. I wasn't aware that that was a confidential submission.
Well, I mean, I can help you fill in some of the gaps if you like. I mean, there was a very lengthy period in which these documents were sought and the Treasurer's Office was involved with this very, very elongated process of protecting this submission for some purpose. So I'm just trying to work out why a super fund that's engaging with the Treasury in this way had a confidential submission, the only confidential submission.
Vera Holshaw, Assistant Secretary, Housing Division. I'll have to go back to look at the request. Generally, we release all submissions to public consultations, but people submitting or organisations submitting can generally ask for it to be confidential. But I'll have to go back, but I cannot recall that it was requested to be confidential.
Okay, so do you know how many meetings were held between the Treasury and CBUS?
No.
You don't know how many?
Treasury, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you said the Treasurer. I don't believe any meetings were held, but I'll check with my colleagues.
There were no specific meetings that during that time that
certainly not that related to the
HAF.
HAF.
Related to the HAF.
We can't really necessarily speak for all parts of Treasury, but certainly related to the Housing Australia Future Fund.
Okay. So, how many super funds do you think will put money into the HAF?
I'll ask my colleagues to help me out in a minute. I mean, I think we are yet to see that. The Housing Australia Future Fund bill has been passed, and we're now in the process of developing the investment mandate for Housing Australia to deliver the fund. The first part of that will be going out for procurement, and in that procurement process we expect to be able to see the extent to which a range of different investor types are able to or wish to bid for proposals under the HAF.
So how many funds will you expect will invest in the HAF?
Senator, just to be clear, we're not expecting, or nor is there a mechanism for super funds to be directly investing in the HAF. The HAF will make disbursements from the funding made available from the $10 billion. However, if your question is how many super funds do we expect might be interested in participating in funding projects under the HAF, we don't have a number on that. And I expect that Housing Australia will have more information about the likely involvement of institutional investors and other potential investors once the investment mandate has been made public and we've had a consultation process on that.
Okay, so how do the super funds engage with this process then? How do they invest their members' money into the HAF and its related vehicles? How does it work in English?
So in terms of how the HAF will be rolled out, as a first step, there will be an investment mandate that will set out directions for Housing Australia as to how it will be administered. Once that is registered, Housing Australia will then be able to roll out funding rounds. So Housing Australia will be seeking submissions from projects for funding under the HAF. Now, these projects are to be brought forward by eligible project proponents, which will be outlined in the investment mandate. We would expect that institutional investors might partner with project proponents to put forward a proposal for financing from the HAF to develop social or affordable housing projects.
Okay, so there's no special regulations required. They just invest in the usual way.
Well,
I guess what I'm asking you is, are you anticipating that you need to create additional regulations
for them to be able to participate?
Yes. Are you?
No.
Okay. So just on this last issue on this, to do with this part of the house, so there was an FOI on this. Do you know about that?
Yes.
So part of the email from CBUS to the Treasury Department has been blacked out for commercial in confidence reasons. And this was an email sent Thursday, 24 November, the day before Mr Swan, who is the CBUS chair but also the president of the Labor Party, committed $500 million of the members' money to this scheme, which is the only public commitment so far. So why would there be, I mean, what sort of commercial in confidence information would have been transmitted to the Treasury the day before this announcement?
Senator, I haven't seen the unredacted document.
My understanding is that the FOI was to, it was not communication with Treasury, not with the department.
Who's it with?
The decision maker, I think, was it was a Treasurer's Office FOI.
Okay, and what sort of commercial and confidence information do you think might have been transmitted to the Treasurer's Office?
We actually can't speculate on that.
Do you know anything about this, Minister?
No, nothing about it.
Okay, were you able to take this on notice? It's a matter of public interest, given there was a public statement made the day after this email was transmitted, which is apparently we can't see.
I'll see if there's anything further. I mean, if you've had an FOI, what's the question you want?
Well, there's information that's been blacked out from an email from CBUS to the Treasurer's Office. Now, obviously, the conflicts of interest here are heightened because Mr Swan is the president of the fund and the Labor Party. And so we're trying to work out what's being transmitted here.
Well, I'm sure in the FOI it would have been given, that redaction.
It says commercial in confidence.
Right. Okay, well, I would imagine that is the reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, what sort of information will be commercial in confidence?
Well, I haven't seen.
Okay, well, can you take it on notice?
Well, I'll see if there's anything further to assist the committee.
Okay, thanks. Just on to some broader HAF issues. So when does the government expect the first homes will be built?
Senator, we expect the first disbursements to be made from the HAF from the 1st of July next year. So the timing of homes being built will be dependent upon when those funds flow through to projects being commenced and then built and completed.
Okay. So do you mind if I ask Ms Kelly a question? Do you know anything about this CBUS matter?
No, I don't.
You don't? No. Thanks. Okay, that's easy. And where will the bulk of these dwellings be built?
The location of the dwellings will depend on where the successful projects are located. However, there is a requirement for Housing Australia to make 1,200 dwellings in each jurisdiction available across all of its programs. So that's not necessarily specific to the HAF.
Okay, and if there are years when the fund doesn't make a profit, does it still make disbursements?
So the HAF Act provides for a fixed disbursement of $500 million per annum. That is regardless of actual returns. The returns may fluctuate on a year-to-year basis, as is often the case with investments, but the framework provides for the ability to disburse $500 million per annum.
Even if there's no profit?
So the expectation is that a fund provides for a certain return over a period of time. Right. On a year-to-year basis, sometimes it may be lower, sometimes it may be higher than the average disbursement over the years.
Right. Have you done an investment mandate for this fund now?
We are working on it, and we expect that it will be released for public comment in the near future.
Okay. Why wasn't it released with the legislation?
Because I think the legislation had to pass before you could finalise it, so that you know what shape the legislation was in. It's very hard for the Parliament
to make a judgment on things where there's no detail provided.
Well, it's just a normal way you would establish a fund.
I mean, even that explanation
you would determine, this is exactly the same process that was followed with the National Reconstruction Fund. The legislation passes, so it's very clear what the legislation is and how the Parliament's determined that, and then an investment mandate follows.
But I mean, even that explanation we just received then doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, how do you have a stable disbursement regardless of the fund's income or losses in a year?
Well, the investment mandate would set out the rate of return, and we would that's seen you could have seen over the longer term.
Yeah.
You know,
well, that's
so
nice
the
you know
fund
that
is there for the long term. So there may be years where it earns less, and there may be years where it earns more. But the Parliament has passed legislation that requires disbursement from the fund, as you know, that was the agreement reached to get the fund through the Parliament.
Yeah, but it's nice that you know that information about the investment mandate and the rate of return. I mean, the Parliament was asked to make a judgment without knowing any of that information.
Well, I think there was lots of discussion that went on around that. I don't think it's any surprise.
It's not very transparent, though, is it?
Well, this is the way it's done. I think it's the way it's always been done under funds. I don't think investment mandates predate legislation that establishes funds.
I thought you were committed to that transparency.
Well, it is. The investment mandate, it is transparent, but there's a normal...
No one's seen it.
Well, you'll see it shortly.
Oh, when?
Well, it's in the final stages, as I understand it.
Great.
But I think the Minister has been clear. I mean, unfortunately, your political party chose not to engage on the housing fund, but where there has been cooperation and discussion, I think that openness of engagement about what people would like to see and how that would be reflected in the investment mandate has been understood. But you all said no to it, so that ends a pretty short discussion. Okay.
Well, so what measures will be in the mandate or in the HAF arrangements to help first home buyers? Like, what will the government do to try and tilt the scales in favour of first home buyers in relation to this HAF?
Well, that's a broader question about the government's housing policy, which we can go into. The Housing Australia Future Fund very much is focused on the delivery of social and affordable homes, and particularly targeted groups within that. So that's the purpose of the Housing Australia Future Fund, but we have a range of other housing policies which would go to the question you ask, and happy to go through that.
Okay.
If you like.